What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ben LeDonni. You can check out the website at bnpengage.com. And Ben, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, a couple fan favorites, Ian Garlic, who big shout out because he introduced Ben and I. Ian had an interview. He talks about his video case story business, where he highlights case stories to help build people's businesses, those video case stories. And he told a really interesting story because he comes from an entrepreneur household. His dad was an entrepreneur. And it got the creative juices flowing, Ben, for me, because he said his dad had a restaurant with live dolphins in it. Okay. And that would be weird.
That's awesome.
In general. Okay. And even if he's in Orlando now, but the restaurant was in Wisconsin, which makes it even stranger. So listen to that episode. It definitely has some interesting stories in it. Another one was Adee Clevitt. Adee Clevitt helps businesses. She's a done-for-you agency for businesses to create SOPs, right? So that was interesting. And people will hire them to do smooth out their onboarding client process or onboarding staff process. And we geeked out on our favorite software and productivity tools. So that was a really interesting episode. And then Todd Taskey was another one. He's got the Second Bite podcast, and he helps pair agencies with private equity and Second Bite, because sometimes the private equity, when they sell again, they make more on the second bite than they do on the first. And so that was a great episode on valuation space, agency space, and just business in general. Check those out on InspiredInsider.com. We're going to talk about Ben and his transition after selling two. But this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Ben, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content, amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Ben LeDonni's CMO of BNP Media after his agency was acquired. And they are a data-driven B2B digital marketing agency. And their growth marketing strategies are combined with custom website design, development, and that all helps increase awareness, conversions, and sales and revenue. He has an interesting background of a graduate of Villanova University in a BS and master's in computer science. And we'll talk about what he's going to coin engineering-led marketing at some point. So you heard it here first when he comes out the book, Engineering-Led Marketing. Ben, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Jeremy. I appreciate it. And I definitely share the sentiment on being a go-giver. That's my attitude too. It's one of the books that's up here right here as far as being able to help people and have them give back. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Yeah, Bob Berg, I had him on twice, go-giver. I'm going to have you talk about Engage and what you do, but talk about some of the books above you and some of your favorites now that you pointed that out.
Oh, man. Well, so the one that I just read is this one here, Same as Ever. Loved it. I mean,
Same as Ever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a great book. Really kind of principles of things that just never change, that people and human behavior throughout history is always about the same. And he cites a whole bunch of examples and how the wind can blow a certain direction and change the course of history. Yet the decisions that we make are always rooted in a couple of key things that, we all have as humans. Some of them good, some of them bad. So anyway, just a really cool one. What else would I call out? Traction at EOS. running the business, the way I did. I used the concepts in traction and rocket fuel to really help that. Let's see, what else do I have here that I would probably call out? I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, as you're looking there, I did have Mark Winters and Gino Wickman on the podcast, Rocket Fuel and Traction, both awesome books. What else do you
I'll
have
give
there?
you, yeah, I'll give you another one that's up there. It's called Changing the Game. And it is not a business oriented book. And I feel like a lot of the people here would appreciate it though, because it's for somebody that's raising kids that are in sports and how to not go crazy like all these parents are these days about, all the sports uh, training and all sorts of passion that we have as adults. So the author's name is John O'Sullivan, and he does a good TED talk, which is an easy way to catch some of the cliff notes. But basically, like you wouldn't want your son standing behind you when you're swinging a golf club and telling you you're doing it wrong. So don't tell them they're playing basketball incorrectly when they get out of practice. Like just let them play and have fun. So I love that book.
I just listened to Raising Empowered Athletes by Kirsten Jones, which was also really good about how do you raise kids and not, helicopter them. And so that was a good one too.
I'll have to check that out. See, awesome.
Any others behind you that we should check out?
Oh, let's see.
And as you're looking there, also one of my favorites is Never Split the Difference, which is by Chris Voss, ex FBI hostage negotiator. And most people get it for business. I got it from like you were mentioning, Ben, from a parenting perspective, because I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, if this guy can deal with terrorists and negotiating, then maybe it helped me negotiate with my kids. So
So I have a friend that just that's awesome. Negotiate with the kids. I have a friend that recommended that book to me. I actually have to. That's on my list. I got to get to that
it's
one.
fantastic. There's an
Yeah.
hour interview if you want to hear the Cliff Notes version that I did with Chris on the podcast. So yeah, it's a good one.
Oh man, I'll have to
Yeah.
check that out. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, the other one I mentioned, Mindset, Carol Dweck or
Yeah,
Dweck.
Dweck. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that in terms of there's another one that's similar to that, which is Grit. I think it's just called Grit.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
Yeah.
they're really similar. The author that wrote Grit, I'm blanking on her name, but she was at UPenn and
I
she's
think it's
local.
Angela Ducksworth or that's coming to mind.
Ducksworth. Yeah, that sounds
Duckworth.
right. So sorry, I forgot her name. Obviously, you spent
Duckworth.
so much
Yep.
time in public, I feel like you should just remember it.
Angela
But
Duckworth. Yeah.
both great principles for business and family. I mean, like raising kids that have a growth mindset around you make a mistake. It's a lesson learned. Take something from it, and then being gritty about speed and direction. Like you pick a direction, go in that direction full speed, and every time you get distracted and you go somewhere else, you're actually not working towards your main goal. So those two books hand in hand. I must have read them together because they felt really similar.
I had to revisit that one. I think it's been a while. So thanks for the reminder on that. Grit. So let's talk about Engage for a second. Thanks for your rundown there. That helps. I love resources, especially getting into your mind a little bit. And we're looking at the website here if people want to check out the video portion, bnpengage.com, and talk a little bit about what you do as a company.
Yeah, so I mean, your intro is spot on, Dr. Jeremy. The whole data driven, yes, for sure. But just at the core of it, we see so many businesses, especially in the B2B space, they're trying to grow. They know they need to do it through sales and marketing, but they've never actually charted that course. So we just talked about grit and speed and direction. The first step is where do you want to go? What's the direction you need to go? And so we start with strategy and planning, plan out things like who's your main audience, what makes them tick at night that help them call you, and who's your best customers. We were just on site with a customer yesterday, which I'm sure I'll tell you more about them. But, we were talking about who their best customers are. Why do they like them? The reasons they lost deals and what happened as a result. And, and all that stuff is strategy that once you outline the direction that you want to go in, we start talking about the speed and the things that we need to do to get there. And so we call that production, where that could be producing content, design, development. A lot of times it's heavy website or CRM, email, things like that drive results. And then marketing and optimization for us is very data driven. What's working out of the production stuff we just created? Where are we trying to deploy advertising, be it on, some publication type of advertising website, some event that we go to, some email, like you name all the channels that you might want to go through to advertise a business. we'll make sure that we put the plan together so we're working within a budget that the company wants to work within, and then measure and optimize as we go. And so we create relationships with that where we'll start off. I mean, we have companies that we've worked with for 7, 8, 9 years now that we started with strategy, and we've revisited their strategy, but we just help them to keep pace and keep working forward in a very gritty fashion.
We're looking at here the approach for a second, and I know that's where kind of the foundation starts with the strategy. Can you talk a little bit about what we're looking at in your approach when you start working with someone?
Yeah, so we are big believers in the basics and one-on-ones of marketing, like define the audience, know your audience, KYA for all the marketers. Like you have to do that. And it's just, I think in B2C, a lot of times people have no choice but to really define their brand and their audience. And in B2B, it's kind of like, hey, we got by without doing this for so long. We shouldn't have to do it. We're fine. And so we're a little different in that we'll force people to sit down and think through, no, we need to know your personas before we start doing anything. We need to make sure we understand your customer's journey. What are the questions that they ask as they go through a sales process? And it's great. I mean, when you think about B2B sales, a lot of times the sales cycle might be 6 months, a year. And in that time period, there are 2 or 3 decision makers. There are countless questions that get asked. If you never really sat down and thought about that as a business owner, a marketing leader, even a CEO, like you really are missing some key points that help drive growth in a business. And so our approach is to really extract that out. We do it through workshops, which is kind of a smaller type of engagement. Could take easily like 4 weeks and that's it. Do a workshop, define it, make sure we get a roadmap in place, and then execute on that roadmap. Or in a bigger picture, it's a handful of stakeholders, maybe up to 6, where we're interviewing them, getting all the key details about what makes a company tick and how we can help drive growth, and then outlining that into personas, customer journey, strategic marketing plan, and then also a content calendar and content plan as far as what they need to do to reach their audience. So all those things come together, and that makes a big roadmap, right? We talked about grit already. So there's direction, and then the speed at which we go, or the steps that you need to do to take to get that direction and accomplish that mission, is really just a roadmap that we execute on, and we go month over month producing content, updating, revising websites, building things, revising the CRM, emailing people, whatever it takes to get the output that we're looking for.
Ben, at some point you have to make sure we talk about engineer-led marketing, which kind of goes into your background before you started the agency. But talk about the evolution of the niche. When you first started your agency, before getting acquired, way back when, what was the original kind of idea and niche you were going after at the time?
So, man, I learned a lot in the time period that I've run the business. And I was very ignorant to niche early on. I mean, I did anything and everything from a technical perspective, from like servers on site at somebody's location to website work, B2C, B2B, startup, you name it, didn't really matter. It was like somebody that needed my help. I was willing to help them if I could help them. Gradually over
Do you
time,
remember your first customer client and
yes,
what you
I
did
do.
for them? What was it?
It was a tile company. They imported tile from Italy. It was a friend of mine from Villanova at college, and he basically, like, his family business. This was 2002 at the time, maybe 2001. And his dad was like, "I want to get online on the internet and put all of our tile up online." And back
Was it
then,
AOL at the time? What was
yeah,
the internet?
right.
Did you hear
Man.
static on the line? Was that time?
Technology wise, I mean, it was, I don't know, some kind of net something that we would buy the domain through. We used Lunar Pages for hosting. We would, buy the domain, buy the hosting, deploy the HTML, CSS files. Not a whole lot of database connectivity, or definitely not a WordPress CMS type stuff. And I was in college for comp sci, so I was learning all of how to build the websites and web pages. So I was like, yeah, no problem, can help you do this. Maybe it was $1,000 or something. That was good beer money while I was in college. But he was the first customer before I even formed an LLC and started the business. And that was a good, foray for me into learning, well, I can do this as an entrepreneur and help people and do something I love. Ultimately got his website up and running and online, and then still very good friends with Jonathan. He went off to work for other companies, and I've helped him at each one since. one of which is one of my favorite case studies of all time of BP Group. So
We'll talk about BP Group in a second, but why did they want to go online? This is like most of the time, you had to convince someone, even probably years after, to even have a website. Do you remember why? Like they were obviously an early adopter and were onto something.
yeah, I mean, what made them tick to decide to go online? I don't 100% know. I mean, you still get these, the growth adoption curve and the early adopters and stuff like that. They must have been somewhere on that early curve to want to be there. I think so much of it was a problem they were trying to solve, right? Like every type of invention comes from some kind of problem. And for them, their problem was getting people to the showroom to see their products. And so they wanted to be able to give people their products in a digital format so they didn't have to call everybody and speak to them with an Italian accent and not be able to communicate properly and all those things. And so this was a problem that they were able to solve with digital. We inventoried their catalog, put it up online. Well, personally, I did it. It was just me at the time. And then they had their showroom was part of the internet.
So it started with a tile company and doing a website, which in that point involved a lot of different stuff. Like you really need to be very technical at that time to even put a website online. I think domain names probably cost, I don't know, hundreds of dollars at the time. They weren't like $10. So it wasn't like inexpensive for them. But what was the next milestone of a client and what you did for them at that point that you remember?
Oh man. So next milestone, I'll have to give that some thought. I mean, the next company that I worked with was actually a DJ and entertainment company that I did their website. Believe it or not, I still try and keep that one because I always want to remember where you started, but this was Rhythm of the Night Entertainment and basically worked with them to get their website up and running. I worked with him, Scott Reagan, no longer with us, rest in peace,
Hmm.
Scott, but he was a
Sorry to
great
hear that.
mentor for me as an entrepreneur. And he actually, he was a DJ. I, helped him set up and helped him DJ and he taught me how to do it. And when he wanted to get online, it was another opportunity for him to be progressive and get his website up and running. Milestone wise, that's an interesting question because I think one of the biggest milestones in the journey of the business was really, there were two big ones. One was content management systems, and the other one was responsive design. And I mean, tying this into engineering-led marketing, I think that's always been at the core for me is like these things change and the technology evolves, and then everybody's forced to adapt and adopt, right? They have to adopt the technology and adapt the business to use it. But for me, like those two things were opportunities for me to dig in and get my hands dirty and start saying, oh, we could use WordPress for a website. That's kind of cool. Like it's a blogging platform, but really we can modify it to make it work. And then all these people that say they want to edit their own website, I could actually help them be able to do that in the back end without me having to do it and charge them hourly for it. And great, let's get them there. And then responsive, which responsive happened way before that, but responsive was okay, the iPhone comes out now all of a sudden everybody's business, their websites don't look right on a phone. The technology changed, engineers led the conversation about how the marketing needs to adapt. And then here we are with, people like me and my company that can help them do that. And the reason I bring up engineering-led marketing, because we are in a huge version of that right now with AI and things like Replit, where you can build your own code outright using an agent. Like there's just so much that's possible right now. So I think we're in another major curve with the recent releases of all these AI technologies.
I can see what you're saying with the engineering-led marketing, like the engineering of whatever the iPhone or these smart devices, and then that changes how we have to market in a lot of ways. And even probably from the technology side, how the different platforms. What does that look like now? Like I could see how the iPhone comes out and you have to create this responsive design. Obviously, you have to modify the copy and other pictures and things. What does that look like now and from the engineering-led marketing perspective?
So, I mean, there's the tip of the iceberg that everybody talks about is search, right? Like the way we find our information, or I did find it 2 years ago, Google search, keywords, got results, and then went on and look through a million different blue links and figured out what you wanted to do. That's just totally blown up right now. You typically can get an answer, even Google and Gemini, they'll give you the answer right there. You may not ever need to go to the website. And so you're seeing search volume decrease and all this stuff that happens as a result. But that's not the biggest one, I think. I think that's a product of this change. The biggest product of the change, I think, is the way that we work and the way that we're able to produce, be it content, marketing, anything inside a business is just totally shifted. So in my mind, there will be, a shift in the way that the job roles are structured and functions operate around the tools that are now available that marketing has a huge impact on, meaning that like a marketing team doesn't necessarily need to be shaped the way that it was before. It needs to be shaped very differently in order to use the tools properly to help get the job done. So we're a big HubSpot company. We love HubSpot, deploy it for companies all the time, set up their workflows, all those great things. While HubSpot's coming out with AI technology constantly. What they produce, if we don't know how to use it, we're not elevating and staying involved in the game, and we're not able to provide the type of consulting that we need to the companies that we work with. But I'll even just say like the role of the marketer is different. Like your role no longer is to sit and write copy and have it be like, the most amazing copy since sliced bread to be a thought leader on a website, because nobody might ever come to your website to read it. So that's just totally not there anymore. I mean, there's versions of it that are, but so I just think it's way more about what tools do I have? What am I capable of doing with those tools? And how do I shift and operate a marketing team to leverage those tools to get ahead as a company? That's the biggest shift.
Do you have any insights or thoughts on, you said, marketing teams will be shaped differently. How do you see them being shaped now, like with different roles?
Yeah, I see one thing for sure, strategy is way more important than ever before. Like not only the tools that you choose to use, but what are we trying to accomplish so we could pick the right tools that we want to use, because there's a plethora of AI stuff that's out there. I think the role of a junior copywriter is gone. I mean, I've heard many people on podcasts say that, but I really do believe it's true. I think really good content will still continue to work, especially not AI created. And I think that connection between the brand and the consumer being authentic is so important. So you've actually like flipped the script because there's so much fake stuff out there. You're almost like enabling an ability for a company to reach out and be authentic to differentiate. And that's great. But you still have all those tools in the back end to be able to do that. So I'll give you an example. We take this podcast, I'm giving you authentic feedback and thoughts and everything, but we're going to have a recording of it. We could go to Opus Clip and take clips of it, of me and you speaking, and be able to post that online to our audience and connect with our audience in an easier, different way. So there's another role of reusing the content that we already have, repurposing content, using it to drive connection that totally exists that didn't before. And then the other piece I would touch on is just meeting recaps and recordings. Like, I mean, Otter is part of every call that I'm on. 2 weeks ago, it was Fathom. In 2 weeks, it may be something else, depending on the feature set, which one we want to use.
Yeah. I think we use Read AI.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, think about what that does for you. Like you don't and should not type up meeting notes anymore. You should recap the meeting, review the notes, take the action items, put them into your Asana or whatever, and make sure that they get done. But we've just changed the workflow. See what I mean? Like that's a different workflow than before. We should be able to get more done. And if your marketing team's not working like that, then that's a problem. I'll give you a last one because now I'm geeking out on all the engineering stuff. But GPT teams, we use ChatGPT teams, and we've got trained GPTs on things that we want to use over and over again. So train GPT, you think of it like the LLM, like ChatGPT knows all of this stuff, but a GPT, you're training it on something specific that you want it to know all the time, every time you ask it a question. And so we've got GPTs, for example, that are trained on specific customers of ours, their personas, their customer journeys, the frequently asked questions that people ask. And then when we want to come out with an email, it's laser focused right towards that audience because the GPT already knows it. Will we send it without reviewing the AI content? Absolutely not. But will it help us think through some strategy and planning and what we actually want to say? 100%. So these tools are just empowering us as marketers. If you're not using them, you're going to drag behind.
Yeah, I love that. So an example would be, we'll talk about BP Group for a second, but like if you have a commercial HVAC company and you're like, listen, here's all the customer questions, here's where they're at the journey. We need an email to speak directly to the customer, and they can like actually come up with some really good copy because it's using, and listen, it came from the strategy that you set in place in the
Correct.
beginning, right? Because you can't magically just have this. So you train this thing based on your strategic approach to getting all of that background first. And that's the foundation, right? And that's kind of going back to what you're saying is like the strategy is going to be the most important thing. So I'm going to pull up BP Group and you can talk a little bit about BP Group and what you did there.
Oh, so you won't see BP Group's website up anymore. It's going to redirect
Well, I just
to
have it on your
Ainsworth.
page here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So BP Group. So Jonathan, who I worked with at Quarry Tile, the first customer that I ever worked with, he took on a role as a chief financial officer or financial advisor, something with this company, BP Group. And basically came to me and was like, look, we need to elevate our game online. And this was years ago. I mean, this was years beyond when we did Quarry Tile's website. So Quarry Tile was 2001, 2002. I think Jonathan called me about this in 2016, I want to say, probably. And we worked with them over 4 years, probably, to elevate their brand over time. First thing was nail down their audience. They want to reach commercial HVAC people in the metro area. They were in New York. They did some residential, but they wanted to put an emphasis on commercial. They wanted to spotlight their technology and their service and their people and all of that. And so we really like honed in on what do we want to say, the content, elevated the website, rebuilt their entire website from the ground up, made sure it looked beautiful, posted to social media routinely. One of their ultimate goals was to, look the part in case there was an opportunity for acquisition. And so they had a competitor that we were chasing that was one that set a good example, that was a bar we wanted to jump over. And we ultimately elevated the brand, made sure the messaging was going out there on email and social. And like I said, looked the part to the point where, when they ultimately wanted to sell, and I don't know how that all went down, wasn't privy to it, but I know they got a phone call and were courted by me and spoke to them and also ultimately, did sell and had an exit. And, after that was all said and done, got the phone call from Jonathan, who said, couldn't have done this without you guys. You guys obviously elevated our presence to the point where we were relevant and drove customers and made sure that we grew in a way where we were worth something, and that's valuable. So that to me is cool. I love that story because that's what we pride ourselves on doing, is growing a company, growing its equity value, growing its customer base, its ultimately revenue through marketing, return on investment in marketing, and then make sure that there's alignment as far as what they're doing and they're going in the direction that they want to go.
Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned before about the shifting of job roles, right? Talk about yours. We'll talk about pre and post acquisition, but obviously you started off and your job role was everything, right? You coded the site, you were the salesperson. What were some of the roles that maybe you stepped into and got yourself out of throughout the course of the agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So first hire I made was actually a developer, consultant developer, consultant designers. Allowed me to do more of the sales, relationship-based stuff. And honestly, I have the attitude of hiring for things that I'm not the best at. If there is somebody better than me at something, then I'd rather them be on my team than me doing that. I still have that sentiment. I think it's a great way to run a business. And then when you hire people, you don't want to tell them what they should do. You want to make sure that they tell you, this is what I think I need to do to succeed. You hired me as the expert and trust me. So anyway, design development. And then at some point I hired a project manager, account manager. That was one of the best hires. I think, in hindsight, that type of person as a first hire can really help you make sure you're scaling and doing things right. Going back to strategy, but that's a lot of strategy as a business. And then One other thing we started to grow into as technology and marketing evolved to not just be websites, but be responsive and then be SEO led. And the websites were not just about being there and looking pretty, but also driving, eyeballs and attracting an audience. We got into a lot of SEO and some more of the digital strategy. So hired a marketing director that, knew her stuff. She's still with us. Jen's great. First PM, truly PM that I hired that I would say really, took us to the next level. Tyler, he's still here with us as well. And really those two hires from being, leaders that can drive results from both a organizational and project management standpoint, and then a strategic and marketing standpoint for clients really helped us, get to where we are. I'd also add in administrative help. I mean, as you get to a certain point, I think we were about 10 when we hired Alicia, also still with us. She was an executive assistant when we brought her on, but now she's like the glue that holds the team together as far as doing all of the micro things like setting meetings through to big things like helping us with making sure that collections and invoices and all that stuff is organized. So some really key hires throughout the growth.
Yeah, it's funny because I often hear the person who starts as that admin assistant has gone up to COO, like, because they're just doing literally anything that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so they learn a little bit of everything. I'm curious about the account manager piece because from some of the conversations I find people have a hard time training and onboarding those people. It's sometimes the position with the founder is like has that relationship with the clients and how do they onboard that person and transition out. I'm curious how you onboarded your account manager.
Yeah, I think you have to change your perspective on it first before you hire it. And I learned this the hard way. But you assume you're going to hire that person, then 100% of the account management's going to go away, and it's not true, right? It's like 80-20 for the first 3 months, maybe, and then it flips to 50-50 for the next three, and then maybe it's 80-20 the other way. The remainder of the relationship. And if you go in with that mindset, it's not like you're handing off the relationship that you have and that you've built. You're bringing on somebody that can support you and do a better job than you are doing with that. I also tied account management and project management together for better or worse. I just felt like it makes a lot of sense to be committing to something and then making sure that it's getting done. And then the other piece to that I was going to say is just the challenge and perspective around they're not going to do it the way you did it because it's your business. Like, yeah, you may answer that email in 30 seconds and realize it's super important because you don't eat if you keep that money. To them, they have a job and they feel like they can do it tomorrow, and that might be okay. Like, you just have to, understand that. And that depends on the person that you hire. Make sure that you're setting the right, growth plan for them and where they're weak and where they need to go. But again, I lucked out with who I brought on because they really added a ton of value and actually taught me like, hey, you don't need to respond to that email right away. They're not our biggest customer, and I'm doing these 6 other things that really have a priority, and maybe we need to think of those first and foremost. And so again, trust the people that you hire. You hired them to do something, let them do it.
So pre and post acquisition, talk about what was your role pre-acquisition, like right before you got acquired, and then we'll talk about after.
Yeah, so sales and business development, and then just overall overseeing the company, plan, the vision, managing team members, and making sure that we were just heading in the right direction. So a lot of what I did was OKRs and planning objectives and key results, and making sure that we knew where we were going. And then a lot of the relationship-based sales, partnership-based sales. And then post-acquisition, still very involved in the mission and vision of Engage. I did elevate that person that was the project manager that came on board. He's now the managing director of Engage. And so he's able to kind of run the business. I mean, having been with us for 7, almost 8 years, he's seen it all and knows how to do it and has a lot of the relationships. So and then now what I'm doing is trying to integrate us, or actually integrating us way more into the relationships that we have at the bigger company. So BNP Media, been around since the 1920s, has like always been at the forefront of driving B2B industries forward. And that was up until like 2019, all print publications and magazines. And now it's shifted towards digital and audience and, digital connections through content online. And so we're still continuing to drive the industries forward. I'm now looking at the relationships that we have with people that advertise with us, people that show up and exhibit at our events, and see how we can be more of a marketing partner than what traditionally may have been more of an advertising partner. And so that's part of it. And then the second part of it is just elevating what we do at BNP Media from a marketing standpoint. So as soon as I got in with the acquisition, I elevated BNP Engage's brand, because that was the brand we were consumed under. We were no longer Creative MMS. We went through a revision to the logo. We updated the website. And now I'm doing that at BNP Media. The main website's going to be elevated. The message that we come out with from a marketing perspective will just position us to make sure that everybody knows what we can do really well, which is be a marketing partner.
Yeah, no, I think we're looking at the website. I'm going to share it again. It looks beautiful. It looks really nice. What was from the acquisition perspective enticing for them for you to be acquired?
Yeah, so I mean, we were approached by a lot of different companies. I mean, we were a successful company. We had a lot of conversations. The thing that was appealing to them was also what was appealing to me. They have relationships, like I said, with advertisers that have trusted them for a long time to make sure that they're driving eyeballs and audience and doing a really good job. And they have great content editors that, know their spaces, be it roofing, Assembly, which is a great magazine around like the materials and the facilitation of things coming together. HVAC, which is another one, obviously we have some parallels there. But anyway, they have many brands, right? So they have like 50 different brands that they manage, as well as events and things like that, with people that trust them to get eyeballs and audience in there. So to me, that was really appealing, to be like, we've already got people that know, like, and trust a brand, that we can come in and help more people, right? Our mission statement still really is to strategically partner with those that are seeking the most effective digital marketing solutions. And so we can do a better job of that mission statement if we partner up with them. That was from my perspective. And from their perspective, they got to bolt on a team of experts that know digital marketing really, really well. Like, we hired great designers. I'd put our designers up against almost anybody from a web design standpoint. Our development team, amazing. Put them up against anybody, from, especially when it comes to WordPress or front-end web stuff. They're amazing. And then our marketers, like I said, from a strategic standpoint about how to use the tools that are out there, how to read the data. Like, they're best in class people that I've hired and trained and have worked with B2B companies forever. And so from an acquisition standpoint, they got to bolt that on and offer that service and that, marketing partnership to all of their customers in a way where we can elevate together their reach and our knowledge. And it just makes a ton of sense.
What's the best way? I know, like, when there's an acquisition, especially if it's a strategic acquisition, there's a lot of synergy there. What's the best way? And it sounds like they have a huge database. What's the best way to get the word out without maybe overwhelming your team, which is maybe a good problem of, now we have this huge database. Let's just tell them we have all this stuff we can do now, right? So how do you roll that out?
The good news is we're good at marketing, so we were good at segmentation, right? Like, that is a segmentation challenge when you describe it. It's the way we thought of it. Your small circle, first and foremost, is my team. My team was a communication that we needed to make sure, like, we're talking to our team about the value, about what's in it for them, about why this is a good opportunity, why we still see a future, and why I did this. And then that extends out to customers and partners, right? Like, we may have even had a circle just for partners and talk to them differently, because our channel partners, like Ion, like, people that we have had relationships with for years that we send work back and forth, had to know this. And then customers, and we may have segmented that into retained and everybody else, right? And then we thought about the message to each one and the segmentation to each one and how we communicate this over email and phone calls and all of that stuff, to make sure that it was really clear, like, the narrative and the reason why we did this. And the rebrand was a part of that. I mean, we definitely had those conversations before rebranding. But then once you rebrand, it's like, we have a new look and a new feel, and it puts us alongside the parent company. But ultimately, we're going to deliver the same amount of value that we have, hopefully more, because we have editors that know their stuff and content creators that can help, as well as a reach that we didn't have before. I mean, we just went into a meeting yesterday. This is another one of my favorite case studies, but Glass Enterprises. We went into a meeting with them yesterday talking strategically about what they want to do next year. And part of what we're going to do is layer in advertising on one of the brands that BNP Media owns to reach their audience. We couldn't do that before. We didn't have that relationship to know. Could we have gone through a media buy and done all of that? Yes, but now it's just literally, hey, I know the data, I know the people that we want to reach. We have your personas. We're going to build out a campaign and hit this audience here while we continue to do your CRM, your email marketing, your social media, and all your other stuff over here.
It's kind of a natural fit because you're just brought in as like, hey, from the strategy perspective, how do we get the most amount of eyeballs and out there? And so you're brought into these projects just because this is part of the strategy at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it in an arrogant way, but it should be, right? I mean, like you think about the two worlds colliding as far as BNP Media and BNP Engage, but the audience that ENR, which is one of the bigger brands, has, or Architectural Record, another architectural brand, that reach that they have to their audience, that's what you would call almost like an own audience or first party data type people. And that's great because they trust you. You can put content there, but that doesn't exclude the fact that you still need to be talking to your customers. You still need to be doing your social media, your website content, all of those things. And so that's a natural pairing to be able to do both strategically.
Ben, if someone's, thinking about selling their company, either they're selling them now or someday, what are some of the things they should be aware of or look out for? Maybe it's something you wish you knew, or maybe it's something you're like, I'm glad I did it this way.
Oh man, there's a lot there. I mean, first of all, I'm happy to talk to anybody that is. I like to help with stuff like that, and there's no skin in the game for me besides just being able to make sure somebody doesn't see or feel pain that maybe I felt. Um, I think the most important thing I would say is have a good relationship with the person that you're working with that is going to buy you, and test that out. I mean, we buy from who we know, like, and trust, but on the other side of the acquisition is a relationship that you're going to want to make sure is strong and healthy. And like, I'm very blessed and lucky that Tag, who's the CEO that acquired us, like, he and I have a great relationship. We built a relationship before the acquisition and now continue to have a really good relationship. I put that at the forefront because I don't think anybody would want to work for a company or for somebody that they don't really see the trust maybe or see the value in them bringing to the table. So, I mean, to me, that was the best thing and still continues to be the best thing. And I would say I would look for that first and foremost above numbers, above anything else. I mean, definitely the number stuff. One of the books we didn't mention was Built to Sell. Love Built to Sell. Would highly recommend reading it. There are probably two or three others that I had read or listened to over time. If you're an agency owner, Two Bob's podcast. I mean, he's great. Well, both Bobs are great, but there's so much stuff. I mean, know the valuation, know your numbers. I think the advice I always give is to make sure you have a good financial person that has your data in order, because you have to know your data like through and through. And the company that's acquiring you is going to ask a lot of questions about it. So it has to be organized in a way that it makes sense. So we were, again, blessed to have already been working with kind of an outsourced CFO team that had our data stitched together, Zero with a whole bunch of other tools that were working really hand in hand, and a monthly meeting to go over the data. So I understood it because that's not an area that I learned. I was a geek, tech guy. So finance was kind of school of hard knocks for me. But yeah, those are probably some of them. There's probably 10 or 12 other ones I would say. I mean, you want to make sure you keep your team. You want to make sure the people that you work with are still trusting you. So make sure that you bring them into the conversations at the right time, I would say too.
Who are some of you mentioned kind of financial people, who are some of the trusted professionals that were key on your doesn't have to be on your immediate team, but like that you sourced that was important in the acquisition process for you?
Yeah, so we had a company that we worked with that was an outsourced CFO team, like I said. The woman's name I worked with was Christine. She owns the company. Walsh is the name of the company. Walsh, I don't know if it's financial or Walsh Accounting. But Christine Walsh founded it, a smaller team. Like I said, very technical. The one thing she said to me is we are all ex-forensic accountants. So that's the approach that we take. And that was the thing that was like, this is worth it for me. So we went from having a bookkeeper that was a couple $100s a month to keep QuickBooks up to date and felt like a very like, every time you pay it, it's like, I'm doing this just for taxes. I don't know why I care to do this, to being like, no, get your data in order and it will help you drive decisions about which are your most profitable customers, which products are doing the best, which teams are making you the most money, like all that stuff that is essential. So I would say Walsh was huge. I would also say, I mean, you need a business coach. Every business leader needs to bounce ideas off of somebody. So be it a tab group, Vistage chair, even some of I know a lot of people trust some of the advisories like the agency groups as kind of the business coaches. So there are ones that are out there. They go to masterminds and stuff like that. You need something like that helps balance the numbers against the future and where you're going, drive the engineering-led stuff forward as far as what they're seeing in the market. But all that's really important.
Love it. Ben, I want to be the first one to thank you. This has been fantastic. Just a lot of gems in here. I want to encourage people to check out bnpengage.com to learn more and check out more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Ben, thanks so much.
No, thank you, Dr. Jeremy. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.